Hello everybody, thank you for joining me in this video. In this video we have a project we're going to do. I have had to do a voiceover on this because the original audio was very choppy in some parts. I don't know why it did that. The video seemed to do pretty decent. You'll see the video skip around in a few parts, but the video itself was one I wanted to salvage. So that's why I'm doing this voiceover. This right here is a knife I picked up at a pawn shop. This is a case 22087. The 2 is a reference to the black synthetic Delrin handles. The second 2 is a reference to the fact that this is a two-bladed knife. And then 087 is referring to the handle of this knife. They also make this knife in a Stockman and a penknife, and I have both of those. So yeah, this knife was needing quite a bit of restoration done to it. One thing is the tip sticking out of the handle there, as you can see on the pen blade. I don't know why that's protruding like that. It might be the way that it's been sharpened in the past. Another thing I've got to do is the main blade here, as you can see, is bent a little bit. Now, I do not believe this was done by human error. I believe this happened in the factory somehow. I believe that blade is a little bit warped. So we're going to try to straighten that blade out and get it good and straight down the center like it ought to be. We recently did a video in which we straightened out the blade on a crooked Joker 108A model, and that one had really soft steel in it, and it was pretty easy to do. Now this one here is a stainless knife, so that's why I'm going to attempt it. If it was a carbon steel blade, I probably wouldn't even attempt it. Another thing we're going to have to do is, if you notice, like down here around the tang, around the kick, notice all that black coloration there, that dark gritty. And you see that on a lot of these older as-ground blade knives from Case. I really don't know what it is, but I don't really like it on there. So I'm going to try to get that off. And that can be hard to get off. Normally, if I'm dealing with a knife with a mirror polish or a carbon steel blade, I'll just take and buff it right off with my jewelry buffer and some white buffing compound. But I don't want to do that on this knife because this knife has these satin as-ground blades, and I want to keep it original. So I'm going to try this a different way when we get to it here, and we're going to see if it works. I'm thinking it probably will, though. Another thing we're going to do in fixing this knife up is we're going to try to center the blades a little better. They're not real bad, but I was kind of going through this whole knife, so I thought I would do it. The main clip blade is a little over toward the show side, and the pin blade is a little over toward the pile side, and we're going to adjust them just a little bit. They don't need a whole lot, but I wanted to go ahead and do it here while we were at it. You can see here a little bit. It's hard to get good lighting here, but the blade is riding a little close to the show side. Now, I prefer my blades not to be right down the center, but to be leaning a little bit toward the side that the nail nick is on. That way, when you go to open the blade and you apply pressure to it, it keeps it from pushing in and rubbing the inside liner. A lot of the blade rub I see on knives is on the opposite side of the nail nick, and it's not because the blade is off center, but because of the pressure. The blade bends a little bit as you go to open it. Now to adjust this, all you got to do is, I usually put the blade itself on some soft material like this leather glove, and I take some kind of wood rod. I'm using a brush here because it's convenient, and I've got a little hammer here, and I'm going to lightly tap on the top of this. Now if you're using a stainless knife, you can try this. Do not try it with a carbon knife. There's a good chance it will probably break. And it's probably best not to even try it with a stainless knife, unless you're like me and you just enjoy messing with stuff. But it took me just a few tries, and I got it just right where I wanted it. This knife has a pretty good set of back springs on it. This is a 2004 model. I plan to do a video soon showing my knives from 2004, because for some reason I've got a few knives from 2004 that I've bought used here, there, and the other place. And we'll show them in video, because they're very different, the ones I have from that year. But this one is from 2004. I like these black Delrin handles on this knife, because they take good character. and they're simple looking. Plus the Delrin makes the knife a little lighter. Yeah, if y'all go to adjust your knife blades like this, just be careful to don't hit it too hard. Just take it light and take it easy, because sometimes just a little bit of tapping can go a really long way. So just take it easy and be careful as you do it. But I've had excellent success with it. Now, one thing I do need to say is this knife, when I picked it up, the clip blade had zero wobble at all. It was just like it ought to be, nice and firm. The clip blade was good, but the pin blade had a little bit of wobble to it. You could wobble it left and right a little bit. Not a whole lot, but when you held it up, you could see daylight through both sides of the liner on either side of the pin blade itself. You're going to notice, though, that as we go through this video, that wobble is going to disappear as we clean this knife up. And I have noticed that happens often. I don't know why that happens, but it seems to do it sometimes. Seems like the wobble will leave some knives after you use them. That joker that I worked on was the exact same way. After I worked it a little bit, all the wobble went out, and it had a nice, tight, super tight blade. So what we're going to do right now is I'm going to try to straighten out the tip on this clip point a little bit. You're going to need an anvil or a vise, some kind of sturdy piece of metal right there, and then lay something soft over a leather glove again. And I'm going to set my blade on top of this, and I'm going to hit it with this 4-pound mallet, and I'm going to smack it a few times, varying my position to try to straighten this blade out. Now, I do get this blade straightened out, and it gets to looking pretty good. Like I say, I think this happened at the factory. You, of course, have to be careful doing this, just like you have to be careful doing it the other way when you're centering your blades, because there's many different ways to hurt yourself or to damage your knife. Probably the only thing that can't get damaged is the anvil and the hammer. But I worked on it for a while, and I did get this blade straightened out and got it looking pretty good. You can kind of see here. It's looking good and straight. One time I had a case 6318 amber bone medium Stockman, and to get the sheep's foot blade, somebody had used it, I think, to tighten they had used it to loosen a flathead screw, and I kept trying to figure out how to tighten it, how to straighten out the blade, because it was just at the very tip, and it finally hit me what I needed to do was to tighten a flathead screw, and I did, and it lined that blade right back up just how it's supposed to be. Okay, so the next thing we've got to do is we're going to try to fix this pin blade so the tip isn't sticking out of the handle anymore. I have just a small, simple belt sander here, and I'm going to use that. Now, I'm going to be taking the material off of the spine of this blade. I'm not going to be removing any material from the cutting edge itself, and I'm more or less just going to be carving the tip down a little bit so that it is closer to the cutting edge itself. I just took it slow when I was doing this, trying to make sure that it looked right, because I wanted to keep the natural curve of the blade. If anybody looked at this knife, I don't believe they would be able to tell that I had modified this pin blade. And that's the goal, of course, that we're all going for. If you do a repair, and everybody can tell it's been messed with and repaired, the repair wasn't as successful as it could have been. So there you can see how it looks. Setting in there pretty good, and it looks good to me. Didn't have to remove too much, plus it still has a natural shape to it, and it looks pretty good on there. Now here in a little bit I'll show you how that you blend in the part that you've sanded on the back of the spine, how you blend that in with the rest of the spine so it doesn't look like it's been sanded on with a belt sander. But yeah, if you do a really good job at what you're working at what you're doing, nobody should be able to tell that it's ever been worked on or that it's ever been messed with. It's just like if somebody went to a doctor to have some facial surgery done, like a facelift, and they have this facelift done, and you notice after the facelift, when they look in the mirror, that that their nose is on the side of their head and their ears in the middle of their face, they'd say to the doctor, this ain't quite right. It's not how it's supposed to be. It ain't original. It ain't natural. It should be the same way when we're doing repair jobs on knives. They should look natural. So right here I have an abrasive wheel that I have put on this Dremel tool. Now this is not a really coarse abrasive wheel. I got the finest one I have. And I'm going to use that to blend in the section on this back of the spine where I used the sandpaper. And it only took just like 2 or 3 swipes over this. And it had it blended in perfectly. And you couldn't tell that it had ever been sanded on. And you can see here it just looks great. It looks just like the spine. And that's what we're going for. It looks completely natural. Nobody would ever know that has been messed with. Now, I was talking earlier in this video about how that we were going to get some of them spots off of this blade without buffing it. And how we're going to do it is to use this abrasive wheel and this Dremel tool. And we're going to spin that wheel real slowly, line it up in the same direction the case had milled that blade initially, and we're going to run it right down this blade, and that's going to give it a factory looking finish, and it's going to clean up the finish and make everything look brighter and more natural. Here you can see again that gunk that we're going to be taking off, and I have already taken it off this pin blade. See how much cleaner and how much better it looks? It looks brand new like it did from the factory. And you can see it here comparing it to the other one. See the spots around the tang stamp on the main blade, and see how clean it is on the pin blade. And this is how I did it using this Dremel with this little abrasive pad. I guess that's called a Scotch-Brite pad, somebody might call that. But yeah, this is a really good method if you ever have a knife with an as-ground finish that you're wanting to clean up a little bit. This is the best way to do it. Now, I think one error would be to run your Dremel really fast. I had mine just about on its slowest setting and didn't apply much pressure either, and kept it moving and kept it even. And you'll see that we come out with a very good finished product overall. I think it looked really good. I wonder why so many of these 087 pattern jackknives had this black synthetic handle. It's interesting because there's very few case knives that are common with a black synthetic handle. The only ones I'm aware of offhand would be the Sodbuster Jr., and this knife right here. And every one of them has the black Delrin handle and an as-ground finished stainless blade. So that's an interesting characteristic to me. If any of y'all know why that's been common over the years, comment down below. I'd like to know. But this has an interesting looking clip point blade. I like the way it looks overall. And you can see we've got it looking really good here. It looks factory, I think. Later on in this video, or the second part of this video, I'm going to compare it to a factory 087 Stockman. And you can see that they look basically identical. Toothpicks. Y'all know how useful toothpicks are whenever you're working on a knife, whether you're restoring it or cleaning it or whatever you might be doing. Toothpicks are extremely useful for getting in those little areas. Seems like most people that have a Swiss Army knife, a Victorinox, seems like they usually use the toothpick to clean the knife. But yeah, you can get in there and got to get everything cleaned out. The surest sign in the world, at least as far as I'm aware, that a knife has been carried is if it has lint down in the handle itself. Some people don't use a knife much, so the blade won't show any wear on it. Sometimes you can look on the handle and it'll have a lot of dents and scratches from rattling around in their pocket with their keys or with change or something else. But the surest sign to see if a knife's been carried is to see if it has any lint down in it. Because if it's carried for even a week or so, it's going to have some lint down in it. That's the surest sign and probably the easiest way overall. Also, what kind of oil do you all normally use when you're oiling your knives? Comment down below, I'd be curious. I know different people use different kinds of oils on the pivots on their knives, so I'd be curious what y'all are using. So I'm just going to finish cleaning out this knife here. If y'all want to, you can skip on ahead to 16 minutes and 52 seconds into the video, and there you'll see me start to buff the knife. So we're now going to buff the bolsters on this knife and try to get them all shined up. I'm going to be using my normal white compound that I use, and I've got just a small jewelry buffer here. I've got this little trash can here that I keep my polish in, but I'm going to try to get these bolsters shined up and looking nice and shiny like they ought to be. Now, one thing I'm not going to do is, if you notice, the one pin is a little proud on the pivot. I'm not going to sand that down right now because I really plan to use this knife a lot, and this knife's going to be a user. And so I don't want that, in case I need to tighten this blade in the future, I would like to have a little extra pin sticking out so I can really peen it well if I need to. So for the moment, I'm just going to polish it up really good and get it nice and shiny. And I can't even catch that pin with my fingernail, so it's no problem. It doesn't bother me at all. I've got new cases from the factory that have a pin that sticks out further than this one does. This one may have been sticking out from the factory. I really don't know. One thing you got to be careful about is not to melt Delrin. If you're using a buffer, certain kinds of Delrin can melt. And so you got to be careful. If I'm going to be touching the Delrin, I try to turn my buffer down, touch very lightly, and keep moving because it can start to melt a little bit. I've only had it happen to me once, and that was with a case full-size sod buster. I was going to polish up the cutlery rivet there in the pivot, and when I did, I just applied too much pressure, and I had the buffer going too fast, and it started to melt it just for a second. Now, I was able to clean it up. It wasn't any problem, but I could see that if somebody wasn't really observant as they were doing it, that it could damage it and melt it pretty badly. Some people will put tape over it, especially if it's like a yellow Delrin handle. They'll put some tape over it when they're buffing, and I reckon that might work pretty good. So here we have him all done, as you can see. It's nice, bright, and shiny, just like he's supposed to be. Before I'm done with him, I will put some Flitz polish on this knife and polish him up at a drill press. That will clean him up even better, especially the black handle. Also, I'll probably run him through some turtle wax on the polisher also. But I'll do that after I've sharpened him. That'll be the last thing I do besides maybe oil the pivot. You can see I think it's looking really good. This is going to be a user, one I carry, one I throw in my overall pockets and take off with. It's not in perfect condition, but it looks pretty good. These knives generally run 50-something bucks from what I can tell. And the last I saw one was for 47 was the best deal I saw one for brand new at a pawn shop, but he was cutting a special deal. This one I got for $25 out the door, which I thought was a good buy for it, all things considered, because we're getting it cleaned up pretty good. Now I'm going to use a Lansky system to sharpen this knife. If you're doing that, make sure that you put some tape. I'm just using regular old duct tape here on the blade. If you don't do that, the clamp can leave some marks on your blade, which you absolutely do not want. So make sure that, unless you have the fancy model with the rubber and grips, make sure you put some tape on the blade. It just takes a minute, and it keeps the blade from getting scratched up. Now, when I'm sharpening case of steel, I tend to stay with an coarse grit stone. In my experience, case of stainless does not like to be sharpened to a mirror polish. It performs very well if it's left a little coarse. So how I generally do it is I will sharpen one edge until I get the bar to roll over. Then I'll sharpen the other side till I get it to roll over. And at that point I will alternate sides a few times until I've done that enough to get rid of the bar, beat it down. Then I take it off, and I've got a 1,000 grit ceramic stone that I run the edge over a few times, and that just hones it up and does a really good job on these stainless knives. Now that won't work good on a lot of other steels, but I find it does for these. I did a 25-degree angle on my main clip blade, and I did a 30-degree angle on my pin blade. Now that's a common thing I do if I've got a double-bladed knife. If it's a Stockman or a jackknife, or like a peanut of some sort, with a small pin blade, I will usually leave the edge coarser on the pin blade, and I'll use it for my harder tasks and keep the other one sharper. So this video ended abruptly on me when my camera died. I don't know why it died, but it glitched out. So I'm going to post another video here, and it will have the rest of this restoration. But thank you all for watching. Y'all have a good day, and keep your knives sharp, and comment down below on what you think about this knife and if you have one like it.